Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. My son chose his wife's birthday over his father's funeral. I changed my will. My name is Margaret Lewis. I am 66 years old. It has only been a few weeks since my husband died, yet it feels like a lifetime has passed between that fateful morning and today. The void he left behind is so immense that sometimes I find it hard to breathe. My husband, Thomas Lewis, passed away in his sleep one Thursday morning in May. I remember that day vividly, as if time had stood still. The morning light barely filtered through the drawn curtains, yet it seemed cruelly cold that day. I found him lying there in our marital bed, his face peaceful like that of a man who has simply fallen asleep for a short nap. No screams, no struggles, not the slightest indication of pain. I hope with all my heart that he was not in pain, that his departure was as gentle as the sound of a gentle breeze. But, in that moment, all I saw was the man I had loved for more than 4 decades, now motionless, frozen forever in silence. These 43 years that we shared together played through my head like an old black and white film, a film that was sometimes joyful, sometimes sad, but always intense. We had weathered storms, crises, conflicts, doubts, but also calm moments, moments of tenderness and complicity, bursts of laughter shared in the depths of a summer evening, and those sometimes heavy silences, when words failed but presence was enough. We had always walked side by side, in this house that we had built stone by stone, day after day. And then that May morning, life shattered this fragile balance. It left me alone in this house that was now too big, too silent, too empty. Every object, every corner, seemed to bear the imprint of its absence, a void impossible to fill. Phone in hand, I was trembling. It wasn't just his voice that was missing, nor his laughter, nor his presence. It was the certainty that, from now on, I had to face the coming days without him. With that weight of absence that crushes the heart. I called the first person who seemed both closest and most fragile in this storm, Andrew, our only son. My Andy, my boy, the child I had seen born, grow up, become a man. My heart sank thinking of him. Andrew, he's your father, he's dead, I said, my voice trembling, barely audible. An icy silence fell on the other end of the line, as long as the weight of the world. Then, in a hesitant, almost distant voice, he replied. Mom. I'm sorry. It's a shock, yes. But, you know, Saturday is Claire's birthday. We've planned a big party. There'll be a caterer, a DJ, her whole family will be there. I don't know if we'll be able to come. I froze. Was this a nightmare? Or had I misunderstood? You mean you won't come to your father's funeral? I asked, my voice breaking. It's complicated, Mom. Claire would be really hurt if I cancelled everything now. A mixture of disbelief and pain washed over me. How could he choose a party, laughter, a frivolous celebration, at the very moment his own father was leaving forever? How could he distance himself from the pain, ignore the final goodbye, so as not to upset his wife? I didn't say anything else. I hung up the phone without a word. A part of me refused to believe what I had just heard, still hoping that he would change his mind, that he would remember where he came from, that he would find the strength deep down to come and say goodbye to the one who had carried him, raised him, loved him. But this wait was in vain. The Saturday, the day of Thomas's funeral, the sky itself seemed to weep. It was gray, an ashen gray, a mournful gray. The rain fell in a thin, icy trickle, as if each drop were in time with my own tears, silent but constant. It wasn't a stormy rain, no. It was a sad rain. A rain of memories. A rain of loneliness. I arrived at the church early, wrapped in a black coat that felt too heavy for my weakened shoulders. Every step I took on the soggy ground echoed in my empty chest. The small stone church, the one we'd chosen together years earlier, just in case, seemed strangely foreign without Thomas. The entrance smelled of damp wood and half-burned candles. Inside, all was silent, except for the faintest sighs and sniffles. On the coffin, I had placed a white rose. Just one. Simple, like him. Understated, like his love. In the benches there was me two sisters, who came despite their pain, and some long-time friends, those who had known Thomas in his years of glory, then in his years of decline. And then there was Rachel, my niece, sitting in the front row next to me. She had placed a gentle hand on mine. She hadn't said anything. She hadn't needed to. Her presence was enough. More Andrew wasn't there. Every time the door opened and a figure entered, my heart briefly lifted. I hoped. Maybe he had been given a start. Maybe conscience had knocked at his door. Maybe, despite everything, he would come. More the door never opened for him. Instead, that day I saw something else. It was Rachel who handed me her phone, discreetly, as if she didn't want me to see it. But I saw. I saw the photos. Instagram stories. Golden balloons hanging from the ceiling of a chic restaurant, plates of seafood, bursts of laughter frozen on painted faces. And Claire, in a shimmering dress, posing in front of a wall of flowers. A proud look, a dazzling smile, arms outstretched as if to embrace the whole world. Then I saw Andrew. My son. He too smiled. A glass of champagne raised, an arm around Claire. Legend. An unforgettable celebration for the love of my life. Red heart #grateful #blessed. And me? I was sitting on a cold bench, my hands clasped on my knees, in front of the coffin of the man who gave him life. And him, he was partying. I didn't cry right away. It's not easy to cry when you feel frozen inside. The grief was too deep to find a way out. But when I got home after the ceremony, to this suddenly huge and silent house, I collapsed. I didn't cry because Andrew didn't come. Non. I collapsed because he chose something else instead. Because he didn't even try to hide his joy while I said goodbye to his father. Because he had crossed mourning off his agenda as a disturbing detail, a setback to a brilliant day. He had replaced memory with carelessness. Mourning through champagne bubbles. And me, through the void. At that precise moment, I understood that something inside me had just broken. Not just my heart. My trust. My faith in him. A week after the funeral, when the house was bathed in a silence that even the birdsong could no longer break, Andrew came. I hadn't seen him arrive. I was in the kitchen, washing an empty coffee mug, his own, left at the bottom of a cupboard for months. It was a simple, almost mechanical gesture, as if, subconsciously, I wanted to give him back his place in this house. But that illusion was shattered the moment he walked through the door. He entered like a foreigner, two comfortable black sunglasses screwed onto his nose, a cardboard coffee cup in his hand, a wireless earpiece in his left ear. He wore a light-colored jacket, as if he were coming out of brunch, not as if he were visiting his widowed mother. "Hi, Mom. How are you?" His voice was light, almost jovial, as if he were speaking to a neighbor he had met by chance. I turned around slowly. Our eyes met, and I remained silent for a moment. I wanted to gauge his features, his posture, his sincerity, or lack thereof. "You're too late, Andrew." He rolled his eyes like a frustrated teenager. Then he sighed deeply, a sigh heavy with condescension. "Listen. I am sorry, okay? But Claire had really need me. She's going through a tough time right now. The stress of work, her mother being sick, and, you know, she's very sensitive." I looked at it for a long time. No, I didn't know. And to tell the truth, I didn't want to anymore. He continued, as if repeating a speech he had learned by heart, hoping that it would be enough to erase the abandonment, the absence, the contempt. "And then. Dad and I, we weren't very close these last few years." He said it without emotion. As if it justified everything. As if distance justified indifference. As if love should be measured by the frequency of calls or discussions. Then, without waiting for my agreement, he headed towards the Thomases' armchair. He settled into it with icy ease. He crossed his legs, took a sip of his coffee, placed his hand on the left armrest, the one Thomas always rested on while reading the newspaper, and looked at me with an almost professional calm. "You know, Claire and I have been thinking a lot. We think that maybe now would be the time to put the house in my name. It would be simpler, you know. We could renovate it, maybe even resell it. You could find something smaller, something more suitable, a senior residence, for example. Modern. With assistants available. It would be more convenient for you." His words fell on me like stones. Each syllable was a slap. Not a violent slap, but slow, painful, precise. I watched him settle in like an owner, making the space his own, as if he already belonged there. As if my grief were just a detail in a real estate plan. This house, he no longer saw it as a home, but as a possession. An asset. A potential. But for me, this house was a living memory. Each piece told a story. The living room, where Andrew had learned to walk, by holding on the edge of the sofa. The kitchen, where Thomas sang every Sunday morning in preparing his famous scrambled eggs. The stairs, where I had sat all night after catching teenage Andrew smoking in the garden, unable to scold him. The tree that we put up every Christmas in the right corner from the living room, always too close to the radiator, much to Thomas's annoyance. Every corner of this house had seen those disputes, our reconciliations, our birthdays, our farewells. And he, my own son, offered me everything to erase. Of everything sell. Of everything empty. Because his wife need space. I didn't know what hurt the most. His betrayal or his indifference. Maybe the two were one. A chasm had just opened between us. A chasm dug not by a simple disagreement, but by a choice, his own. That evening, I didn't sleep a wink that I lay in our bed, or maybe I should say mibed, now, staring lost in the ceiling, eyelids burning. The silence in the room was thick, heavy, almost oppressive. The kind of silence that doesn't let you think, but forces you to feel, fully, crudely. I cried. Not for Thomas. No. He had gone in peace. He had left this world without a struggle, without a cry, like a man who knew he had given everything. I was certain that he was resting somewhere, peaceful, beyond the reach of disappointment and shame. No. That night I cried for Andrew. For the son I had raised, fed, rocked, cared for. For the little boy with dirty knees and clumsy drawings, who told me that he wanted to build me a house when he grew up. For that son, whom I no longer found in the man sitting the day before in his father's armchair, calculating, cold, foreign. I cried for blindness, for the void, for this invisible line that he had crossed, the one where we stop honoring what has been transmitted to us and think only of what we can obtain. And then, something inside me calmed down. Not out of resignation. For clarity. As if, at the end of my tears, I only had room for one thing, the truth. The next morning, I called my notary. His voice on the other end of the line was surprised. It had been a long time since I'd asked to see him. But he saw me first thing in the morning. I got up early and put on my gray suit, the one Thomas liked. He always said I looked like a woman of substance when I wore it. I picked up a folder. Inside, a photo of our house, a list of my accounts, a card Rachel wrote 2 days after the funeral, a small drawing of the children of the young woman I was accompanying to the church. And a white envelope, unstamped, unaddressed. In my hand, poor Andrew. When I entered the notary's office, he greeted me with a polite smile, but I saw in his eyes that he felt the importance of my approach. I sat down, straight, dignified, and I said, "I want to change my will. Today. Completely." He nodded, and we began. I rewrote everything. The house, our house, the one that Thomas had built with his hands, where the walls still carried the echo of our laughter and our arguments, I have it bequeathed to Rachel, my niece. Because she had been there. No, not pretending to love, but by truly loving. Discreetly. Faithfully. Without asking for anything. My savings accounts, fruits of decades of prudence, of savings stored in envelopes at the bottom of drawers. I have them transferred to a foundation for widows isolated. Because I now knew what it meant to be alone with her pain. And I wanted other women, like me, find a little light when everything goes dark. My life insurance, I made some the support from a young woman I have been helping for several months. Her name is Tasha. She has 2 children, one past marked by violence, but an inner strength admirable. She gets up every morning at 5 o'clock to study while working. She doesn't owe me anything. And that's why I leave everything to him. And to Andrew, I left a handwritten letter. Just a letter. Nothing else. The letter to my son. Andrew. You were my son. You were born of me. I carried your body, but also your fears, your dreams, your anger. I nourished your soul with my love, my sleepless nights, my silent prayers. For a long time, I believed that this bond was indestructible. That no matter what happens, you will always be my boy. But one day, you have selected. You chose to party while I said goodbye to the man who raised you. You raised your glass as I knelt before the coffin. You smiled at a camera, while my hands shook around a rosary. And most importantly, you didn't even have the decency to apologize for your absence. You don't just have abandoned your father, Andrew. You have me abandoned, me too. And then you came. A week later. Not to ask me how I was doing. Not to reach out to me. But for ask me for my house. You didn't want my memories. You didn't want my pain. You wanted my signature. So I am writing to you today, not out of anger, but out of truth. An inheritance, Andrew, is not a right. This is not a debt to be settled. It is an extension of love. And that love, yours, died out somewhere. Between a toast and a song. I don't blame you. But I can't pretend anymore. I hope that one day you will find the courage to face what you have lost. Not my house. Moi. Mom. Today I live another life, a life longer silent, sometimes, but a life full. A life longer simple, yes, but above all, more authentic. I no longer chase after the love of others. I no longer beg for the recognition of a son who has become blind to what matters. I no longer build around emptiness. I build in me. After the funeral, after the letter, after the storm. I was afraid. Afraid of this new solitude, of these empty days, without Thomas, without Andrew. But I discovered that one can living with a broken heart, and that sometimes the light enters precisely through the cracks. I enrolled in a community center, not far from my home. At first, I just wanted to keep myself busy. Pass the time. Pretend. But very quickly, I met women. Real ones. Wounded ones, standing tall. Rejected mothers, forgotten daughters, abandoned wives. Each one wore her own grief, visible or not. We formed a circle. And in this circle, I started talking. Not to cry. Not to complain. But for to transmit. To say that we can get up without taking revenge, that we can exist without permission, that we can be mother without being sacrificed. Today I give conferences, here and there, in libraries, schools, small associations. I'm talking about the dignity of this word that we too often forget when we are a woman, a wife, a mother. I'm talking about the pardon, not the one we give to excuse, but the one we offer ourselves for to free oneself. I'm talking about the family ties, of their beauty, but also of their cruelty when they become chains. At the end of my interventions, it often happens that a young woman approaches of me. She doesn't say anything at first. She looks at me. Her eyes are shining. Then she hugs me. And with a trembling voice, she whispers, "You reminded me of my mother." So, I smile. And I sometimes answer, "And you made me believe that all is not lost. I am not no longer just Andrew's mother. I carried this title for too long like a banner, like a prison too. Today I am Margaret Lewis. Widow, yes. but also alive. Strong. Grounded. Free. I no longer live in expectation of a call, of belated recognition, of forgiveness that may never come. I live here. Now. And I don't have no longer afraid of being alone. Because I am no longer abandoned. I found myself. And this woman I found, I like her. She walks straight, she speaks the truth, she loves gently. She is me. Whole. Finally.